I thought I'd share the story of one of the first experiences I had with mediumship and receiving information, very specific information from somewhere outside of myself that I couldn't have otherwise known. One day, several years ago, while I still lived in Colorado, I was a member of a book club, and the book we were reading was the Spirits book. So I was learning more and more about mediumship and how it worked. And one day I was meditating and I had a name pop into my head, which I'd never received before, anything that was as specific as a name. And the name sounded kind of like, at the time, I thought Bertram. Bertram is a strange name, unusual name, not a common name. I mean, I've heard the name before, but it's not a common name, but Bertram. And I suddenly got the impression that this person who had a name that sounded like Bertram was connected to somebody in the book group that I was in, a man by the name of Malcolm. And not only was this Bertram connected to Malcolm, but he was like a father figure for him. And not only was he a father figure, but they actually looked quite a lot alike. I thought, well, okay. I have no idea where any of this came from, but I wrote it all down in my journal. And I decided that the next time I went to the book group and saw Malcolm, I was going to dig up the courage to ask him if this made any sense to him at all. And so the next week, I was at the book group and I said, Malcolm, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I have a question to ask you. Do you know or did you know anyone with a name that sounds kind of like Bertram who was a father figure to you? And he thought for just a second and he said, well, no, not Bertram. He said Bertrand. And I'm, I'm like, that's close enough. Really? And he said, yes. He said, do you know who Bertrand Russell is? And I did have a vague idea about Bertrand Russell. I knew that he was a British philosopher and writer and mathematician. I knew a little bit about him, but not enough to know what he looks like. And I asked Malcolm, I said, well, Malcolm, was he like a father figure to you? And he said, oh, absolutely. He said, I was a member of Bertrand Russell's Committee of 100, which was an anti-nuclear protest group back in the 60s. And he said he was a really important man in my life. Ooh, I have chills thinking about this. I started thinking, I'm like, well, he's not related to him. There's no way that he looks like him. So I kept that little bit of information to myself. But as soon as the book group was over, I ran to my car to look up a picture of Bertrand Russell. And I nearly fell out of my seat because Bertrand and Malcolm look like they should be related. They have the same high cheekbones, the same kind of hooked nose and slightly disheveled hair. And I mean, they look like they could be brothers or father and son, or maybe even the same person. And I was just absolutely amazed that this information could come evidentially without me having any reason to have known it in advance. And Bertrand Russell has actually shown up now for me many times in my meditation. And I think about him often. And I'm really grateful for that first lesson that he gave me of being able to accept the information that comes. Thank you, Bertrand and Malcolm.